In Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, he writes, "In terms of trauma, people generally fall into two different categories. You either get it or you don't." And while this is generally true, I'd like to bridge the gap between the two groups today and show that there is possibility for candid communication and understanding on both sides. In order to understand trauma, we have to understand three main points: a brief history of trauma studies, how trauma affects the brain, mind, and body, and the resilience of the human race as a whole to survive trauma and continue moving forward. In order to understand trauma, we have to understand a brief history of the study of trauma, and it really all started with the idea of hysteria, of hysterical women. It was top-notch physicians like Freud and Charcot who really started to delve deep and wonder, why are these women acting in such a way that they are taking away from themselves, their family, the things that they are meant to tend to, their husbands. And when learning about these women, when talking to these women, they learned that it all stems from trauma, from domestic violence, from abuse, from sexual violence behind closed doors. Talking to these women, they realized this and they came out with their findings. But in example, with Freud, when he came out with these findings, he saw that this was such a prevalent issue in society that it would tumble the high-class society, as in it would get rid of his funding. And so, backtracking, he really turned the tides in a really negative way, that it took trauma, hysterical women outside of the public eye, and it both disgraced him and it disgraced trauma studies. And it wasn't until the First World War that trauma actually came back into the public light, when young soldiers, young men would come back, have mental breakdowns, and weep and cry. And it wasn't until an American psychologist named Carninger came and he saw the similarities between hysterical women and men of war. And there was a large debate on whether or not these men should be dishonorably discharged or if they should be listened to. And when the Second World War came, when these symptoms came back up into the light, they thought, well, why is it that men of war and hysterical women are facing the same mental issues? And that really spreads light on how horrible these atrocities are, both behind closed doors, in the neighborhoods, and out in the trenches of war. And it really shone a light on why these people are suffering the way they are. And now that we see how the validity of trauma has been in and out of society's eye, we can go on to what trauma does to the brain, mind, and body. With the brain, when we are faced in a traumatic situation, we actually have a certain system in place. We have the limbic system, we have our prefrontal cortex, and we have the amygdala. The amygdala, what it does is that it is the watchtower of your brain. It says, hey, something's wrong. Let's figure out what we need to do. And it secretes adrenaline, and it makes you say, okay, even before my mind is processing what is happening, what am I going to do? Am I going to fight, flight, or freeze? However, in a traumatic situation where we are pinned to the ground, if we are stuck, we can't fight, flight, or freeze, we can't choose what we do, the brain continues to release these chemicals, these stress signals saying, something's wrong, something's wrong. And even after the traumatic experience has passed, it continues to release it. Your brain seems to float in this toxic chemical soup of, there is something wrong, our mind is altered now. What do we do? How do we survive it? And having sit in that soup, your mind begins to alter too. You begin to see everything as a threat. You jump at large, small sounds. You wonder, who can I trust if not my friends, my family, myself? I couldn't even get myself out of this terrible situation. And it makes you perceive things in such a terrible light, and it takes therapy, medication, anything to get that mind moving, get it stuck from the traumatic experience, stuck from the past, stuck from the signals saying help, 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 in order to get better. and that also alters your body, your nervous system, creates new reactions to the trauma that had been experienced. It says, oh, something bad is happening, even if it wasn't a rape, a murder, an atrocity, a disaster, I'm going to shut down. I'm going to dissociate. And that is bad. And you think, oh, well, if you just zone out, you'll get through it. But your body becomes numb. Your mind becomes blank. You are subject to the world around you, and that is very unsafe. You lose feeling in your hands, your body, your everything, and that is not the way people need to live. And now that we know how it affects the body, we can realize how resilient we are as people. We have these systems biologically in place to keep us moving forward, to keep us living. And even if we don't thrive then and there, we're still alive, which allows us to find resilience and healing in community. We have so many other people that have walked in our shoes, that have experienced it, and they can help us. We have resilience and thriving with others, and that is that human connection that gets us out of the past and into the present. And as we can see, despite the numerous atrocities and disasters caused by humans, by our Earth, we as people have been able to thrive and survive. How amazing is it that we as people can continue on, that what we need to live, even outside of trauma, is within us. And that really goes to show that we aren't that different. Someone's been in our shoes, trauma or not. We can experience life together and get better. Thank you.